I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on this Friday. Happy Friday. I certainly want to announce this bit of news. Donald Trump has issued a temporary stay on the execution of the Department of Education. The Department of Education was founded in 1979, 192 years after the writing of the Constitution on September 17th, 1787. 192 years, just a few short decades. Education has had some influence, some control, some direction from the federal government. The federal government, before it was founded in September 17th, 1787, had a mandate really from the War for Independence. In the Declaration of Independence, all men and, yes, women are created equal. And yet, the Declaration of Independence, while it has aspirational goals, it is not the governing document of the United States. The governing document is the Constitution of the United States as amended. And that Constitution on September 17th, 1787 was far from perfect. It referred to African Americans as 3/5 of a human being. It denied women, white women, and ultimately black women, and therefore all women, the right to vote. It denied them that on the basis of their gender. The Constitution of the United States, the governing document of the United States, is less perfect than the Declaration of Independence. And then the Bill of Rights in 1791. The states themselves, the territories themselves, the colonies themselves after the Revolutionary War did not want to ratify the Constitution without individual rights and individual protections in the Constitution. They called those rights the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, all the way through the 10th Amendment. And we are not unmindful of the fact that the Bill of Rights did not apply to the slave. It did not apply to African Americans because African Americans were not citizens of the United States. In fact, the Dred Scott decision made it clear that the white man had no rights, the black man had no rights that a white man was bound to respect. That's the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott himself said the Supreme Court, he called it court. The Supreme Court kept me from my rights. Constitutional interpretation can keep you from your human rights. Since we have a temporary reprieve on the Department of Education, which probably won't last until Monday or Tuesday of next week, and by the time the president issues his executive order and Elon Musk and Doge run through the Department of Education, dismantling every conceivable program that overwhelmingly benefits the left behind, the disabled, the African American, the discriminated against, the school districts without equal and adequate and high quality funding. I thought we'd use this hour to opine on the idea that every American deserves the constitutional right to a public education of equal high quality. So, for the next hour, or 40 minutes after commercial breaks, I want to speak from the subject extemporaneously: the Negro, the Constitution, and the right to an education of equal high quality. The Negro, first, on this side of coming forward. Malcolm X said we were here before the Constitution. In fact, we did not land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. The first slaves arrived on these shores in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia, and that does not include the Caribbean and other parts of the hemisphere, but on these particular shores, Jamestown, Virginia, 1619. Martin Luther King Jr. said we were here before the Declaration of Independence. It would be July 4th, 1776. Of course we were here before the Declaration of Independence. And so the Negro has a story to tell about the Constitution itself and its inadequacies. On the eve of losing and closing down and shuttering and dismantling the Department of Education by President Donald John Trump, I thought we ought to opine on what could have been if we had built a national education system of equal high quality for every single American. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, the Negro, the Constitution, and the right to a public education of equal high quality.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
A new day is on the horizon.
Behind every great moment in history, there's a woman whose story went untold. This March on KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing those hidden narratives to light. Hear extraordinary stories of women who transformed science, politics, arts, and community. Women you've never heard of, but should know. Celebrating Women's History Month on KBLA Talk 1580, where every story matters.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-550-9651. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651. Tax Relief Advocates, real solutions for real people.
Hey, this is Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and for over 20 years, Parkside Economic Development Corporation has served Leimert Park and surrounding communities, empowering tomorrow's leaders and changing lives. Parkside EDC has awarded over $400,000 in college scholarships while sharing economic principles of the Big Five of money with students and their families. Parkside EDC partners with organizations like the Brotherhood Crusade to assure our youth have the financial acumen to succeed. Parkside EDC provides families and businesses with financial insights, offering free online, on-site, and on-air B-Warp presentations. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Programs helps our community acquire, sustain, and pass down legacy wealth. High school seniors can apply for this year's scholarship awards at parksideedc.org. Scholarships will be awarded at Parkside EDC's Gospel/Jazz Brunch on Sunday, April the 27th. For details, tickets, or donations, please visit parksideedc.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
Hey!
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Today I want to speak from the subject extemporaneously, the Negro, the Constitution, and the right to a public education of equal high quality. When I was first elected to Congress in 1995, I noticed an interesting dynamic after I was sworn in by Georgia historian, political scientist, Newt Gingrich. I came into the Congress of the United States in one of the great revolutions called the Contract with America. It was the 1994, 95, 96 version of Project 2025. And the most fascinating dynamic for me that I hadn't appreciated as the son of Jesse Jackson, as a civil rights activist in my own right, was the division that was taking place in the Congress between the arguments of those who argued for a stronger federal government and those who argued for a government that belonged to the states. I wasn't prepared for those arguments when I first came to Congress, so I had to stop and study. And from 1995 to 2001, I wrote a book. It's now 800 pages. I updated, not for myself, but so much more for the future, for the days that I'm no longer here, that someone might pick up the understanding and actually do something about it. The title of the book, A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. What I couldn't fully appreciate, but I thoroughly appreciate now, is that the Negro history in the United States is so central to the development of the federal government that the Negro and the Constitution are nearly inseparable. Every bit of progress that we've ever made has been the great struggle of African Americans, the Negro, African Americans, colored, however you choose to call us at that time or in various moments in American history, to improve America. The Negro is responsible for the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, our condition. The very 14th Amendment and citizenship rights that immigrants from 1865 to the present have used to migrate to the United States on the basis of a willingness to be free, to experience liberty. The establishment of that liberty system is not the pre-slavery colonial system that we found ourselves in, or the colonial system that we found ourselves in, or the system that predates the Constitution of the United States that we found ourselves in. But after the Bill of Rights, the system that we made, the system that we moved forward. On September 17th, 1787, there is a compelling argument that when the federal government was founded on September 17th, 1787, it was not responsible for slavery. That the architects of our republic did not find slavery. It was here in 1619, not founded on September 17th, 1787. It was already an existing system that now had a government placed on top of it. Slavery sanctioned by Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, the Southern territories, and ultimately the Southern states that lent power under the Constitution of the United States to the federal government for the purposes of better coordination, that better coordination to form a more perfect union. Without the Constitution of the United States, we would not have highways from Maine all the way to California. The states themselves are incapable of agreeing on one standard of highway. Every corner in America that has a red light, a yellow light, and a green light, without the coordination of the federal government, every state would have their own different signals for starting and stopping, pausing and going. If you tried to catch a train in New York on one gauge of track, the people in Pennsylvania could say, you've got to get off and walk a mile and go to this train over here because we don't believe in tracks that wide. We believe in narrower tracks. Then you get to Ohio. Well, we don't mind the New York gauge, but you got to get off of that Pennsylvania train first and transfer to this train just to get through our state. And what if the state of Indiana said, we don't believe in trains at all? Only horseback across our state. And then Illinois said, well, we kind of like a different size gauge, maybe HO scale. Imperfect. We needed a federal government for perfect coordination from Maine to California so that commerce could move from Maine to California efficiently. Only the federal government and federal coordination can do that. Only the federal government can say to every airport in the United States that if a 747 takes off here and it needs 10,000 feet of runway to take off, then where it lands, it must have 10,000 feet of runway built in Los Angeles, in LAX, or at ORD, or at Atlanta, Hartsfield, Jackson, or in Miami, Florida. There must be a 12,000-foot runway for a 747 to land. At Midway Airport here in Chicago, you'll never see a 747 land there. If you do, get out of the way. Its runway's too short. It can't stop in 6,500 feet. Real troubles are coming. So 747s have to land at different airports, including cargo airports, including passenger airports, where the runways are coordinated by the federal government. If people in the city of Chicago decide to dump human waste in Lake Michigan, and it goes down the Chicago River to St. Louis, Missouri, and to Louisville, Kentucky, and works its way to Georgia, if we don't have coordination of water standards in Illinois, people downstream are going to get sick from E. coli. So the federal government coordinates the activity between the states for fresh water. But it is the Negro in America that says, our human rights from state to state ought not be subject to what a state thinks of us. We need federal coordination because just like you built highways and train tracks and you've built runways and you've determined fresh water standards, we must have a standard for human rights in the United States of America. And those standards must be protected under the Constitution of the United States. Because the Southerners argued during most of the nation's history, I mean from September 17th, 1787 until the American Civil War, that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to it by the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people, the 10th Amendment. And they used this amendment, particularly the Southern agricultural states, used this amendment to tell the federal government, you don't have the right to come into my state and tell me what to do with my Negroes on my plantation. And to protect that power, the federal government insisted that one free state and one slave state, like animals entering Noah's Ark, must be added to the Congress, to the Union at the same time in order to keep the Congress itself divided. The Democratic Party of Thomas Jefferson in 1793 that became the party of Barack Obama, that was a party of slavery under Thomas Jefferson. It's quite a different party under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Barack Obama. The Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln that wanted to stop the expansion of slavery into the Western states, one free, one slave state, the idea of popular sovereignty going further and further west. Whoever gets there first gets to set up a slave state, or whoever gets there first gets to set up a slave state, a free state. To protect the balance in the Congress between the Democrats and the Republicans, or at that time, just the Democrats and the Northerners who wanted to abolish the peculiar institution of slavery. The 10th Amendment is the legal argument they hid behind in order to protect their state's right to have slaves. Until we, the African American, and we, the American people, and Abraham Lincoln under his leadership, not only issued an Emancipation Proclamation, an executive order. That's how powerful executive orders can be. Not passed by Congress, not approved by the courts, just a presidential signature, executive order called Emancipation Proclamation. So when I argue for pardoning millions of people who paid their debt to society, I'm telling you it can be done by executive order. Joe Biden just chose to do it for his son and his family only. I know what I'm talking about because I'm Black. I know what our people have been through. I understand it. So if we can build highways from coast to coast, and we can build airports from coast to coast, build a more perfect union, if we can protect water from upstream and downstream from from coast to coast. If we can do that, then why can't we build schools from coast to coast? Because the 10th Amendment says that since education, the word education does not exist in the Constitution, the right to an education is a local issue. It's a state's issue. And therefore, some public schools in America, they teach Greek, Latin, French, and English. But if you can hear my voice, they probably don't teach those languages in the public schools that your children go to. So what is the legal remedy to demand that Greek, French, Latin be taught to your child in their formative years as well? Because on the question of airports, trains, and clean water, the nation has tried to build a more perfect union, perfect coordination. But when it comes to our education, it's all separate and unequal. Some students have football teams and football coaches and basketball teams and basketball coaches and tennis teams and tennis coaches and soccer teams and soccer coaches. Some schools have all of these activities for young boys, and some schools, very, very well-funded schools, have the same exact activities for young ladies. Some schools have sports only for boys and none for young ladies. Some schools have activities for some children and not activities for other children. Some schools have bands and instruments and drum corps and drum majors. I'm talking about high schools here. Some schools have Olympic-sized swimming pools that are public in high school with coaches who take their young students to world championships and to the Olympics. You'll not find an Olympic-sized swimming pool on the south side of Chicago with a coach, or LA, or Atlanta, or most public high schools in New York City. They're public schools. But when it came to highways and skyscrapers and landing airplanes, we decided as a nation we wanted to build a more perfect union. But when it came to educating our children, we decided we're going to let the states handle that. So the Constitution is silent on the question of education. And so even though the Department of Education was founded in 1979, it was just a matter of time before the states' writers demanded that the federal government get out of the education business, because it's what? Not in the Constitution. And I've been very specific about the language. I didn't just say, and listen to me, LA, listen to me, Chicago, listen to me, America. I didn't just say, we deserve the constitutional right to an education. That's a low standard. I said, we deserve the constitutional right to a public education of equal high quality. That means that a parent in Los Angeles, in Crenshaw, or on the south side of Chicago can look at a school anywhere in America, go into federal court and say, Your Honor, my child, who is the same age as this child over here in this state, is being systematically deprived the constitutional right to a public education of equal high quality like other children. You can't do that right now under the constitutional structure. But you deserve the right to do that. Now, I'm 60 years old. My children aren't in high school any longer, so I need the constitutional right less than someone who does have a child who is in a public high school. But those parents in every generation are obligated to use the constitutional amendment to make their lives better for their children. So if this school over here, let's say it's over in Wyoming and they only have 10 students per classroom, you have a constitutional right to say to the state of Illinois, I want a smaller class size of equal high quality because I believe in individual instruction and that teachers should be closer to students. But not without the help and the support of the Constitution. Such an amendment, of course, would move the entire education system forward. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We're discussing the Negro, the Constitution, and the right to a public education of equal high quality. We'll continue our discussion when we come forward.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know with BIN News. The measles outbreak in Texas and New Mexico has surpassed 200 cases, the largest in Texas in 30 years. Centered in Gaines County, it has caused 23 hospitalizations and 1 child's death, disproportionately affecting the Black community due to lower vaccination rates. Hamas says it's ready for direct talks with the U.S., but accuses President Trump of blatant double standards. A senior Hamas figure claims peace in Gaza depends on an agreement with them, while Israel refuses direct talks since the October 7, 2023 attack. Springfield, Massachusetts Spring of Hope Church is joining a 40-day Target boycott over its decision to end DEI efforts. Bishop Talbot Swan says Black consumers must use their economic power to demand accountability. And this week in 1857, the U.S. Supreme Court's Dred Scott ruling declared Black Americans were not full citizens. The case stemmed from an escaped slave suing for his freedom. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
You can now start thinking about the Lakers as a strong contender for the NBA championship.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
A new day is on the horizon.
Behind every great moment in history, there's a woman whose story went untold. This March on KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing those hidden narratives to light. Hear extraordinary stories of women who transformed science, politics, arts, and community. Women you've never heard of, but should know. Celebrating Women's History Month on KBLA Talk 1580, where every story matters.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Fatherhood includes being present during pregnancy and beyond, supporting your partner, advocating for your baby, and ensuring a healthy birth. Black fathers play a key role in reducing maternal and infant health disparities, and your involvement starts during pregnancy. Join the free AIM Fatherhood Program today and learn how to support your partner, advocate for your baby's health, and connect with other fathers committed to healthier births. Visit blackinfantsandfamilies.org/fatherhood to get started.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Keep following the leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Yeah, y'all, come on.
Here come the drums. At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah,
gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck B. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Happy Friday. We are discussing the Negro, the Constitution, and the right to a public education of equal high quality. Jesse, what's the economic benefit? Well, before I do that, let me share with you the theological parallel. When I talk with my Jewish friends, I share with them my understanding of the Exodus story. The moral appeal of Moses to Pharaoh, let my people go. Plagues and the hand of God in those events is their story and the foundation of their religion and their understanding of the law. What we share with our Jewish brothers and sisters is the slave condition. They've been in slavery, and guess what? Our ancestors were in slavery too, except our slave systems are different. I tell my Jewish friends, let my people go does not work here. To get out of the slave system of states' rights in the United States, you have to amend the Constitution of the United States. Far more difficult challenge than talking to one Pharaoh, offering him a moral appeal to let my people go. Politically, to amend the Constitution of the United States, it takes 2/3 of the Congress, which means every election we have to be focused on Congress to get a super majority in order to get out of states' rights slavery. States' rights education system, which is a states' rights slave system in education. Since the word healthcare is not written in the Constitution under the 10th Amendment, the right to healthcare in the United States is a state right. That's why we end up with 50 different systems of healthcare, 3,000 different systems of county healthcare, 30,000 municipal systems of healthcare, all separate and unequal. Not everybody in every city or every county has an MRI machine. Not every county has sufficient doctors. Because we can land airplanes at airports, we can build trains to get from Maine to California, we can keep feces from going from Chicago all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, not the Gulf of America, with the strong federal government, but we cannot build a healthcare system for all Americans that increases everybody's longevity. Not without the assistance of the Constitution. Who needs this amendment? The disabled need this amendment, so they can sue state legislators non-violently. We need the appropriate ramps. We need the appropriate teachers. Every school in America, and there are 95,852,000 public schools. What if every 8th grade teacher had to have a master's degree and the federal government had to pay for it? And let's just say that, well, 1 school, 2 schools, 10 schools decided they wanted to change the standard from master's degrees, that every teacher in their jurisdiction has to have a PhD teaching the 8th grade. Let's say someone did that in, let's say, Massachusetts. You know, I get to go into court in Illinois and say, you know what? The Illinoisans the Massachusetts people have a great idea. I want every 8th grader in Illinois to have a teacher who's a PhD. And I want the federal government to put these people through school until they get their PhDs so they can be paid commensurate with their work as an 8th grade teacher. So don't tell me that the amendments don't generate jobs. The First Amendment, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Sirius, FM, XM, Gmail, billboards, outdoor advertising, television, cable, all of these are First Amendment activities, and the First Amendment itself is responsible for trillions of dollars in economic activity. If we had an amendment to the Constitution that guaranteed every American the right to a public education of equal high quality, we could also generate trillions of dollars in economic activity as we all learn multiple languages together. And rather than running from people's cultures, all 95,852 schools deserve at least one Native American teacher teaching Native American history. That's 95,000 jobs. All 95,852 public schools deserve someone whose full-time job it is to teach American history. That's 95,000 jobs. Someone ought to be in that school teaching African American history. That's 95,000 more jobs. In addition to the jobs of people teaching geometry, arithmetic, social studies, writing, reading, world history, trigonometry. Each teacher in each school is one of 95,852,000 jobs per classroom. And rather than arguing about people's history, we would all be learning more about people's history and growing the economy at the same time. Because our tax dollars would already be paying for this kind of education, making it unnecessary to have private schools at all. But we have to have the same attitude about building these schools that we have about what? About tearing it apart. You see, I think this, for me, at least for me, as a constitutionalist, at least for me, amending the Constitution 8 or 9 times in the direction of growing the economy, for me, and I can only speak for myself, for me, makes more sense than reparations. It is the best form of reparations, not only for our community, but for the entire nation, because it's going to bring us together in the long run. As we produce more and more educated people of equal high quality. And as the standard keeps moving upwards in every generation, because every generation is going to make more and more demands based upon new science for the improvement of how people receive education. I know some of you are saying, I want my I saw what you did with your COVID check. I saw what you did with it. You made the French guy, Mr. Louis Vuitton, you made him very rich. Everybody went and bought a Louis Vuitton bag. His stocks went up. It didn't change racism. It didn't stop discrimination. It didn't stop institutional racism. Your COVID check. Your check is insufficient to address the nature of the problem. It would have been better spent building 95,852,000 swimming pools so that our children could truly compete in track and field. And all of our children would have an equal opportunity of getting to the Olympics and getting a gold medal. It would have been better spent here. And long after I am dead and there is dust, our children will be able to go to that constitutional amendment and demand more. Long after the COVID check or the reparations check is gone, the amendment will still be there. Just like the First Amendment. It just doesn't go anywhere. And it's responsible for trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. You see, they got out of the Exodus by saying, let my people go. That's how they got out of slavery. We got out of slavery because the Constitution of the United States had to be amended. But it wasn't amended on education, healthcare, the environment. It does not include the fundamental right to vote. That's a state right. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, the Negro, the Constitution, and the right to a public education of equal high quality.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Diane from Michigan, a disabled senior citizen trying to get by. Henry from Florida, a veteran fighting to make ends meet. Elena from Arizona, a mother struggling to feed her daughter. Hi, I'm Connie Britton, and I support Feeding America because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year, like Diane, Henry, and Elena. Learn more at feedingamerica.org. Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their program. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show in our final segment. My subject matter, the Negro, the Constitution, and the right to a public education of equal high quality. What are the takeaways? The Negro is responsible for human rights in America. Without us, there are no human rights. There are only states' rights. What's our takeaway? Well, you can repeat after me. If slavery is a state's right, states' rights can never be human rights. For as long as there is a United States of America, if slavery was, and that's the argument that they made and continue to make, this war isn't about slavery, it's about my states' rights. It's about my states' rights. If slavery, Mr. States' Rights, if slavery is about states' rights, then states' rights ain't human rights. And because the Constitution of the United States, for example, is silent on the question of women's rights, a woman in this nation, your mother, your daughter, your wife, your girlfriend, your significant other, their rights are protected by the states, not the federal Constitution. And that's why the Supreme Court took their rights and returned them to the states, rights over their own bodies, because of the American slave system and the legal arguments for that slave system. Why isn't the public school in the black community like the public school over there on that side of town? Why isn't the school in the Hispanic community like the schools over there and on that side of town? Because the right to an education in America is a state's rights. It's not a federal right. They didn't build highways and airports and protect waterways, including the Panama Canal, with your human rights on their mind. We had to add human rights and a new definition of human rights to the Constitution of the United States. I think it's a human right from the day I was born to be able to breathe fresh air, not polluted air. Drink fresh water, not polluted water. From the moment I was born, I believe I had a constitutional right to high quality health care, not medium quality health care, not low quality health care. I'm glad we have Medicaid, but it is not the best health care on earth. But I am discussing and I am suggesting that your life is no better than mine. That's why Al Green was protesting on the floor of the Congress of the United States when the President of the United States said that he had a mandate in his joint session of Congress. And Al Green stood up, you do not have a mandate to eliminate Medicaid for the poor. The only health care they got. Of course, Donald Trump will say, I didn't eliminate health care for the poor. I simply turned it over to the states. And I'm going to let the states figure out if they want to give the poor health care. Sound familiar? And that's what Thurgood Marshall understood. And the NAACP Legal Defense Fund understood. That constitutional interpretation of Brown versus the Board of Education mattered. And they went to court arguing that we had a constitutional right to not be in separate and unequal schools. Did Brown versus the Board of Education go far enough? No, of course it didn't. But it's not propelled by the Constitution to go any further, because there's no standard in the Constitution on the question of education. And that allows John Roberts and his Supreme Court to say, based upon the structure of the founding fathers and the framework, we're going to let the states decide who gets the best education. So if you get or go to a public high school in Silicon Valley, it's a different education system than a public education or funded school in Gary, Indiana. That's where the computers are. That's where the microchips are. That's where the software is being developed in Silicon Valley. But over here, every high school in Gary, Indiana is closed except for one. Even the school Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 went to is a shuttered facility that takes up many, many acres in the city of Gary, Indiana. On this day, 40 years after, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years after they sang ABC, easy as 1, 2, 3. because the people of Gary, Indiana don't have the constitutional right to say, we want public high schools in Gary, Indiana, just like the ones you build in Silicon Valley. There's no basis for making that human rights argument unless we overcome the 10th Amendment with the constitutional right to a public education of equal high quality. Teachers can rally behind this. The disabled can rally behind it. The poor can rally behind it. The middle class who are paying too much taxes for the inadequate and low quality education that many of their children are receiving because they simply can't afford to send their children to private schools. And private school children who go to private school, their parents are paying twice. Not only to put their child in a private school, but they're paying local taxes in a school that their children don't even attend. Because the nation hasn't decided yet that building 95,000 new public high schools with the latest technology, with every student in those schools having a laptop or a iPad or the best community, it means that I could take a class in Chicago, Illinois, and if the best teacher was in Poughkeepsie, New York, I could turn on that teacher's classroom. Maybe my teacher isn't teaching it the way I understand it, but I would be able to turn on that teacher in that classroom and basically get the gist of whatever the subject matter is from another teacher. Because when my parents move from this job to this job, when I show up in this city because my parents have moved from this job to this city and into this state, there's no drop off in the education standards because our nation doesn't have a drop off in building runways or train tracks or air traffic controllers. On these questions, we have built a more perfect union. But when it comes to the right to vote, every county, every city, every state has a different standard of voting. And so we end up with chads. We end up with complaints. We end up with people claiming fraud when there is no fraud because we can have the same TSA go through your bags at every airport in America. They got the same blue shirts on, the same badges. You can't even carry a bottle of water, let alone a bottle of Afro Sheen on an airplane. At any airport, there is enormous coordination by the TSA to ensure the safety of every single flight in the aviation system. Why can't we ensure the high quality education of every child in the system? Why is it only the subsidy that we give to the airline industry that requires this kind of security? Why not every school in the United States? This is what Dr. King meant when he said, America has issued us a bad check. It keeps coming back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the great vault of opportunity of this nation is bankrupt. And then he went on to say, I have a dream. What is that dream? That dream is whether you are on a prodigious mountaintop in Tennessee or you're at Stone Mountain, Georgia, you're on the south side of Chicago, you're in Crenshaw, that you have a right to an education like the public schools of Beverly Hills, like the public schools in Silicon Valley, like the public schools in the high income earning mountaintops of very wealthy communities in the United States where they have fewer and fewer private schools because their public education system is so well funded by local taxes that don't exist in the ghettos and the barrios and the trailer parks of our nation. The burden for articulating this message has fallen on the Negro, because the salvation of the democracy itself is in your understanding of the Constitution and the need to expand these rights. Behind each of these rights is an enormous economy to repair for the damages that have been done to the Native American, to the African American, and to women. The left behind, to those whose backs are against the wall. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'll see you guys on Monday.
KBLA 1580.